Welcome to the RKKR Horror Book Club, where we read one horror book a month and then come on here and talk about our opinions like they matter. My name is Caitlin, and that is Rob. If you're going to suck me dry, at least buy me dinner first, Lamonte.
Oh man. Okay. Wow. That was I feel like I need a shower after that one.
So I'm referring to, obviously, we read Salem's Lot by Stephen King this month, so it was a vampire joke. But Salem's Lot, so this was my pick for the month. I chose this book because I've seen it on people's lists of being one of the scariest books. Also, there was that new Salem's Lot movie that came out on HBO. So I really wanted to read the book first because that movie looked cool. It was not good. The movie was not good.
Really? Oh wow, that's unfortunate. I mean, I didn't watch it. I didn't really feel like I need to. And plus I hate listening to a book or reading a book and like immediately going and watching like the story right after. Because I feel
Mm.
like I put too much work into like building up that imagination, characters, how they look, all that stuff in my own head. I guess I don't like the immediate contradiction. I did that with The Golden Compass,
Okay,
or His
yep.
Dark Materials, I should say. I finished that series and then I immediately started watching the HBO show, and it was just I couldn't get through it. It's not like it was bad, but did they make Barlow like a Dracula in that show, or did they make him more of like a Nosferatu in that show? Because he was very Dracula-ish in the book.
Yeah, he was very Dracula-ish. I'm trying to think. I don't even remember what he looked like. But look, we're not a movie review. We are a book review. So that is why I chose this book. What did you think about it? You listened to the audio tape, right?
And I thought it was very good, and I could see where another movie reference here, but I could see where something like 30 Days of Night got its influence, just because like, the town every night is getting slowly overrun by more and more vampires, and they're invading people's homes, like there's only like, what did they say, 500 people in this town.
Mhm.
So as time goes on, more and more people are dying. But the town people just like kind of like, God damn, like another one bites the dust. That's so unfortunate. Well, humpty dumpty dumpty dum. Like there's just that small town attitude. But I thought that the vampires themselves were decently creepy. Like they were good. The only thing I don't like about vampires like this though is that like hive mind thing, like where Barlow is like the master vampire and all of them are not completely on their own to like have their own thoughts or whatever. They're just bloodthirsty mongrels that go after people. They have a little bit of thought, but mostly they just turn evil. They're not like there's no part of them left. I think it's just I don't know, after seeing so many movies where like they're almost like zombie-esque, and reading different books where they are like The Strain had the same type of vampire. Once you're bitten by this thing, you have no thought. You're just like doing whatever the master wills, right? Spread the disease, I think, is like what Barlow was making them do. But I did like the way that they would essentially haunt people at night. I thought that was
Mhm.
pretty cool. I love this era of time. I
Mhm.
love people not having a phone that they can just pick up and like, like, oh my god, a vampire, like, and they're just immediately like recording, like, you know,
Yeah.
it's just it like in our time that would just be over. That would be it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love reading these books of those time periods and just, getting to enjoy a less technologically advanced time. It does give it that like classic fear factor, like when the kids are running through the bush, at the start, like that's terrifying. And I think that every kid that grew up in the 90s can actually extremely relate to that.
Mhm.
And so like I love reading books like this of that type.
Yeah. I agree. I think the first 200, 300 pages. I was really into this book. It was really good world building, seeing the
Mhm.
town. I loved the character building of Ben, the main
Yeah,
character. I loved his childhood memories of going into the what is it called? The master's house or whatever?
Marston.
Marston house. Yeah. Like, that memory of him seeing that ghost hanging, like, there were so many cool, creepy parts to this book. Another part I really liked was, when Susan and Matt are in Matt's house, and he's trying to convince her that there's vampires, and he hears one upstairs because he invited it in, and so he tells her, like, "Keep talking, like, I'm standing here," and so she does, and he's creeping upstairs, like, that whole part, I was like, "Oh my god." And then, honestly, about halfway through the book when it really started getting into the vampire stuff, I it's not like I stopped caring, it's just very clear to me that I have genres that
Yeah.
I don't like, and that is vampires and possession so far, you know?
Yeah, possession can take a high.
Yeah, but honestly, like, same with vampires, dude. Like,
No.
this was
No, no,
really
no, no. I'll disagree with you on that. I love a good monster uh
I
thing.
I'm not I like monsters. I didn't vampires.
But like, so for me, the thing that I didn't like is that it turns into like a pandemic of vampires. And so after years of, seeing so many different movies, reading so many different books, and then you're just like, this is where they got it all from. So it's like after it is an old book and I appreciate it for what it is, but for us reading it now, it feels like a rehash, but it's actually like the OG. Um, so like I do appreciate a lot of what he was like Stephen King was doing. Um,
100%. Yeah. I'm not taking that away from him at all.
but it's just it drew out like too much for you.
It didn't draw out, it was just I think it's exactly what you said. Like, I'm not taking that away from Stephen King. Clearly, this is an old book, and it was amazing when it came out. But I've seen all of these movies before, and so it's like
Yeah.
it wasn't anything new for me. And I guess, like, I don't know what I was expecting. I will say I loved the kid. I really liked Mark. He was a great addition. And I loved that Ben and him had to join forces. Oh, another thing I really liked is I love spoilers that Susan dies. Cause I actually remember thinking like, "Oh, man, I bet she's not gonna die," and this is just like, "Oh, I totally know where this is going, like, they're gonna have to
Yeah.
raise this kid together," and when she died, I was like, "Oh, yes, that's awesome."
Yeah. And
I love
that
it.
that's totally like I was gonna say a nod to Dracula, but I can't remember if like Lucy was actually a character in Dracula that got staked. I know in the movie she was, but when they had to stake her, that's like exactly like what happened in the movie Bram Stoker's Dracula because bam, blood everywhere. And I love that about those kind of vampire, like that it is like a mess. But
Mhm.
yeah, killing off the leading lady is I mean at that time it's very original, right? Like having I love the kid being a part of that and being like the monster squad member basically where he's just
Yeah.
like knows all the rules of stuff. I love that touch again. That's a very like you know late 70s early 80s like these were the superheroes for these like monster things because the parents
Yeah.
were just like oblivious to everything and
Yeah.
they made his parents like that too, right? But yeah, I do like that a lot of the characters were killed. I loved that the vampires would actually set traps
Mhm.
for where they were going to be staying inside of a house or something like that.
Wait, what
Made
traps? Why am I blanking on that?
that was when they removed the steps. It was like
So awesome, yes.
yeah, and like a trap, you know. They should have had hounds, you know. Sometimes vampires have hounds. See, like when I talk about this, all I can do is think about literally every vampire thing that I've ever seen and compare it to that. I wrote notes for this. Okay, okay. This is gonna be because I wrote these like a long time ago. The idea of running up the stairs when those two guys are like moving Barlow's stuff into the Marston house and they're just like automatically like in that creepy environment, they get scared. I also found it extremely relatable when they just like get out of there and they're like, like everybody you turn the light off to the basement and then you just like run upstairs because you're just like something's gonna get me. Like I love that feeling in the book. The narrator has a Fred Gwynn flair for reading the sheriff. Fred Gwynn was like from the Munsters,
Okay.
and he like had this like raw boy like that kind of like speech for the sheriff who was ended
Okay.
up being completely useless at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like completely useless. He didn't even like come in with like rootin' tootin' cowboy, we're gonna like solve this problem. He just was like a non for the
Yeah.
law
Yeah.
of the land. This guy just did nothing the
Yeah.
entire time. He
Yeah.
wasn't even like a familiar. He just sucked,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I really loved the priest. I loved his character. What? You didn't?
No, so Father Callahan, my first introduction to him is during the Dark Tower series.
He's in it?
He's in it. He
Cool.
just like he has more story that goes on after he encounters like more vampires. And he discovers that he can actually kind of sense when like other vampires are around because of like Barlow's blood in him. And
Mhm.
there's different levels of vampires around. There's not just like, Barlow and his like mindless goons. Like there are other different kinds. Um and then eventually he kind of gets sucked into like a whole other reality and like is involved with like a bunch of other stuff. It's so weird because his character is different ish than like it's strange because I don't know if when Stephen King wrote that character he had intentions of bringing him back 20 or 30 years later for this other part in a book that like has almost nothing to do with it other than there's like different worlds that they can go in and out of. So
Were
it's
these
just
books written that far apart? The Stand and Salem's Lot?
no, it's not the stand. It's the Dark Tower series.
Or sorry, The Dark Tower. Are the books
That
written that
book
far
that
apart?
he would have written would have been like what was it? This was 1971. Salem's Lot.
Mhm.
Yeah. For some reason, it's just been sticking in my head is 1971. But like I don't know. I think these like late 90s, early 2000s is when he would have wrote Callahan back into the Dark Tower series. And anybody who watches this and wants to correct me about any of this, have at her. I enjoy all of these books, but if I'm wrong about something, who cares? We're just talking about the things that we enjoy. So, yeah.
Well, in the book, I think that the priest, I loved his character because like the whole book, he's not in it very long, but he's like struggling with his faith. And then when he confronts Barlow at Mark's parents' house and like his cross starts like flickering, like the light is dying, and it's because he doesn't really have faith anymore. And I was like, man, like reading that whole scene was so scary. And I do like that he survived and he just goes on a bus and gets the heck out of Dodge.
Yeah, yeah. Like it was just the the collapse of this team that had just been building up and like, like we're okay, we are acknowledged there are vampires in this town.
Mhm.
Gosh darn it, we're gonna do something about this and we're gonna come up with a plan, and then it just like falls apart
Yeah,
completely.
yeah,
You know, they couldn't
awesome.
like save people at a certain point. Like, they just, yeah, the Fellowship of the Ring collapsed completely.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what do you think? Should we give it ratings?
I think this is a solid 3. I tried to do a Count Dracula. I couldn't do it. Edit that out. No, I'm kidding.
No, I'm keeping it
I'm
in.
gonna say 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5.
Oh my god! Twinsies, 3 out of 5 for me too. 3 shit, I didn't even think about this part of the thing, but 3 dead vampire girlfriends out of 5 vampire girlfriends.
3, watching your parents' heads get smashed together out of 5. 3, clunk, clunk, clunk. How about
Yeah,
that?
yeah. And then really quick too, because we started doing this, but the cover, one thing I will say is that I got this used new-ish one, and I love it because it's a pocket-sized book. My favorite size of books. They're just like the best when they're real thick and tiny. Cover sucks. This cover, I hate it. But I have seen the original covers that are awesome.
The original cover, a window with
I
like
think
2
so, yeah.
kids or whatever, like, yeah.
Floating. Yeah.
And like that, like, would be terrifying. Like, I do, like, I think that I really do want to watch the original made for TV because I think that like for that time period, people were like, "This is scary as shit." Like, what the hell? But they like those kids that like scratch on the window. I've seen those scenes, or and they like they're creepy. They look creepy.
Anywho, see you next month. Oh, right. So next month,
Like, yeah.
next
Next
month,
month's book we're doing is The Monkey. B2B Stephen King. After months of arguing with Katie in the background, I would call her and she would scream at me, no, 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 no. And now she's like, let's do two.
yeah. Well, I know we're doing it because the new movie is coming out next month. And so I want to read the short story so then I can go and see the movie in the theater and have an idea of why it is the way that it is. Bye.
Bye.